The palace of Viora had been quiet for years. Once it was filled with the sounds of marching soldiers, music from silver flutes, and the laughter of a little princess. But now it stood in silence, its long crystal halls covered in dust. Servants still worked there, cleaning, repairing, and keeping the lights on, but the heart of the palace was gone. The queen had left long ago, vanishing into the stars after her daughter's death. No one expected her to return. So when a great ship appeared above the city one morning, its shadow covering the golden towers, panic spread like fire. The guards ran to their posts, the sirens howled, and every worker in the palace froze. The queen was home. She stepped out of the ship without a word. Her tall silver figure was covered in battle armor. Her eyes, glowing faint blue, were colder than ice. The air itself seemed to stop when she walked. Behind her came her soldiers, tall, scaled beings with spears of light. They bowed, but she didn't look at them. She had come home, but not in joy. Her footsteps echoed through the marble halls as she moved through the palace she once ruled. Every corner held memories. Her child's laughter, her late husband's voice, the sound of peace that had once filled her world. Now only ghosts remained. She passed the grand chamber, the throne room, and the long staircases that led to the royal lab, a place sealed since the day her daughter had died. No one was allowed inside. No one dared even look at its locked gates. But as the queen reached the door, she stopped. Something was wrong. The doors were open. She raised her hand and her guard stepped back. The air hummed with her power as she entered the lab. Inside, the light was dim, but machines were glowing. Wires snaked across the floor. Tables were moved, tools scattered. Someone was working here, and then she saw him. A human. He stood near the center of the room, wearing a plain gray uniform with the palace cleaning badge on his chest. His name tag said Daniel. He looked ordinary, just a janitor. His hands were rough, his face tired, but his eyes were focused on the glowing machine in front of him. The queen froze. That machine, it shouldn't exist. It was a revival chamber, an ancient piece of Vieran technology banned long ago after it failed to bring life back from death. Her voice, sharp and royal, broke the silence. "Human, what are you doing in my lab?" Daniel jumped. He turned slowly, holding a metal tool in his hand. His face went pale when he saw who was standing there. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, bowing his head. "I didn't know you were back." The queen stepped closer, her eyes burning with fury. "You are not allowed here, no one is. Who gave you permission to touch this machine?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked back at the chamber. Inside the glass tube was a small figure, a child's body, pale and still, covered with thin silver lines. The queen's breath caught in her throat. It was her daughter, her little girl. The queen's hand trembled. Her guards behind her muttered in shock, but she raised her hand, silencing them. Her heart began to pound in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years. "Explain," she whispered. How did you open this?" Daniel's voice was low. "I didn't mean harm, Your Majesty. He looked down at his hands. "I was trying to bring her back." The queen's eyes widened. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. "Bring her back?" she repeated, her voice trembling for the first time in forever. "You dare to play with the dead?" Daniel shook his head quickly. "Not play, ma'am. I've been learning, watching, fixing what your scientists said was broken. I think she can live again." For a long time, no one moved. The only sound came from the soft hum of the machines. The queen's eyes stayed locked on the chamber. It looked exactly as it had years ago, when her daughter had been taken from her. She could almost hear her laugh, her small voice calling, "Mother," through the halls. Anger and pain mixed inside her. She wanted to shout, to destroy everything in that room, but something about Daniel's voice stopped her. There was no pride in it, no madness, only hope. "You think you can undo death?" she asked coldly. Daniel looked up. His eyes were tired but steady. "I think I can give a mother back her child." The queen said nothing. Her guard shifted uneasily. She turned toward the glowing chamber once more, her face hidden behind her silver crown. For the first time in many years, her heart felt weak. As the hum of the machine filled the air, she whispered so softly no one could hear, "If this is madness, let me see where it leads," and with that, she waved her guards away. The Queen of Viora stood alone with the human janitor and the sleeping child who was never meant to open her eyes again. The heavy doors of the royal lab closed behind them with a soft hiss. The Queen stood still, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The room was larger than she remembered. Walls of crystal and steel, humming machines that once belonged to her top scientists. But now every table was covered in dust and scattered tools. It looked like a place forgotten by time. And yet in the center of all that silence, a small world of light existed, a workbench glowing with life. Cables ran across the floor like veins. Energy flickered through transparent tubes. And beside all that stood Daniel, the human janitor who was still trembling from her presence. The Queen's voice was calm but sharp. "You will explain everything." Daniel swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Majesty." He turned slowly toward the glowing chamber. Inside it, the child's pale figure was still lying motionless, small chest unmoving, skin soft as glass. The Queen's heart twisted painfully at the sight. Daniel spoke, his voice low and careful. "When the princess passed away, this lab was locked. Everyone left. No one came back here for years. I was told to clean the palace, including the halls near this room. But I could never forget. That day," the Queen's eyes narrowed. "You remember?" He nodded. "I was there when they carried her out. I saw your face, Your Majesty. You didn't cry, but everyone knew your heart broke." She said nothing. Her fingers brushed against the glass table beside her, feeling the cold surface as if the past was still trapped inside it. Daniel continued, his voice trembling but strong. "I used to walk past this door every day. One night I heard a faint sound, a machine still running. I thought it was a mistake. But when I looked inside through the cracks, I saw something. A light pulsing from that chamber, like it was still waiting." He looked at her, afraid but honest. "I started studying the old systems. I fixed small things at first, wires, circuits, power lines. I didn't know much about Viren science, but I learned. Bit by bit, I read whatever I could find in the palace library. It took years." The Queen's eyes softened for a moment. "You did all this alone?" "Yes, Your Majesty. I couldn't tell anyone. Humans are not supposed to touch Vioran tech. I knew the punishment." He gave a weak smile. "But I also knew that if I told someone, they would shut it all down. So I worked in secret." He turned to the chamber again. She was still here, still perfect. It was like she was waiting for someone to bring her back. The Queen's breath caught in her throat. She stepped closer to the chamber, her reflection appearing beside the small, pale face inside. For a moment, she didn't see herself as a queen. She saw a mother. Her hand trembled as she placed it on the glass. The temperature was warm, warmer than it should have been. Her body, the Queen whispered. "It hasn't decayed," Daniel nodded. "That's because your scientists placed her in stasis, an energy field that slows time inside the chamber. They called it a failed experiment, but I don't think it failed at all. It just needed the right balance of power." The Queen turned sharply to him. "And you believe you found that balance?" Daniel met her gaze. "I don't believe. I know." For a long moment, silence filled the room again. The machines buzzed softly, lights flickering across the walls. The Queen's face was unreadable. Finally, she asked quietly, "Why? Why risk your life for a child who was not yours?" Daniel hesitated. Then he spoke, barely above a whisper. "Because no mother should live with that kind of pain. I saw what it did to you, to this palace, to everyone. I thought, maybe if I could fix this one thing, even a janitor could do something right." The Queen felt something break inside her, something cold and heavy she had carried for years. But before she could reply, a sudden alarm echoed through the lab. The red lights flashed. A sharp voice came from the comm system. "Unauthorized activity detected in the royal sector. Security approaching." Daniel's eyes widened. "They found out?" The Queen turned, her expression changing from sorrow to steel. "You've triggered the palace defense system." Footsteps thundered outside the doors. Blasters hummed. The guards were coming. Daniel stepped back, panic on his face. "They'll kill me." The Queen raised her hand. "Silence." For a heartbeat, her mind raced. By law, she should let them in. By duty, she should punish him. But her heart told her something else. She looked at the child in the chamber, her daughter, her light, and then at the human who had dared to touch her world with kindness. When the guards burst in, weapons raised, the Queen stood tall between them and Daniel. "Lower your weapons," she commanded, her voice echoing like thunder. The guards hesitated, confused. Your Majesty, he's a human. He's broken every law. Do as I say, she snapped. The guards obeyed, unsure and afraid. Then the Queen turned to Daniel, her eyes filled with both fury and something deeper. You are a fool, she said softly, but perhaps a necessary one. And in that moment, the Queen of Viora made a choice that would change the fate of her empire forever. The Queen stood motionless in the middle of the forbidden lab. The air was thick with the smell of burnt circuits and fear. The guards had left, confused and whispering among themselves. Only two remained in that silent place, the human janitor and the Queen of Viora. Daniel's hands still shook as he set his tools down on the table. He expected her to order his death. Instead, she only stared at the glowing chamber, her face calm but unreadable. The light from the machine painted her silver armor with blue reflections. Speak, she finally said. Her voice was soft now, almost human. Tell me everything. No lies. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes, Your Majesty. He looked down at his rough, scarred hands before he began. Years ago, when the princess had fallen ill, the whole palace had been filled with sorrow. Everyone had prayed, but no cure was found. When she died, the Queen had locked herself in her ship and left Viora, and the palace turned into a place of silence. Daniel had been only a janitor then, a man who swept the halls and repaired small lights. He had seen the royal scientists remove the little girl's body from the lab. Her face had looked peaceful, like she was only sleeping. That image never left him. I was told to clean this room after they sealed it, Daniel said quietly, but I couldn't throw away her drawings. She used to make pictures for you, did you know that? The Queen blinked. Drawings? Daniel reached under a table and pulled out a small metal box. He opened it carefully. Inside were old pieces of paper, faded and stained with age. Strange, childlike shapes filled them. Stars, animals, and two tall figures holding hands with a smaller one between them. The Queen froze. She knew that picture. The smaller one was her daughter. The two taller figures, her and her mate, long gone. Her throat tightened. You kept these? She asked. Daniel nodded. I didn't have the heart to throw them away, I guess. I made a promise that day. What promise? He hesitated, looking at the glowing chamber. That if I ever had a chance to fix what was broken, I would. Even if no one believed me. Even if it cost me everything. The Queen's chest rose slowly. She had heard many brave words from soldiers and leaders, but never something like this from a man who had nothing. You risked your life for a promise, she said. Daniel gave a tired smile. I lost my family long ago. A sickness took them when I was young. I couldn't save them. I guess I wanted to save someone this time. The Queen turned away, hiding the emotion that flickered across her face. She stared at her daughter's still form inside the chamber. The child looked as peaceful as ever, her small fingers curled beside her cheek. Do you even know what you are doing, human? She asked quietly. Vioran life energy is not the same as human. One wrong adjustment and her body will collapse forever. Daniel straightened his back. I've studied. I repaired your core systems. I've read every log your scientists left. I may not be one of you, but I learned enough to try. Sometimes, trying is the only thing left. The Queen said nothing. She walked around the chamber, her silver cape brushing against the floor. Every hum of energy, every spark of light brought back painful memories. Finally, she whispered, When my daughter died, I thought the stars had turned against me. I ruled galaxies, but I couldn't save one small life. That is why I left. Daniel looked at her, surprised. The cold ruler of Viora, speaking like a mother. She turned to him suddenly. If what you're doing fails, you will die. If it works, you may still die. Do you understand this? He nodded. I do. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she said, You will have one cycle to prove your claim. The council must not know. If they find out, we will both be executed. Daniel exhaled shakily. Then I'll make it count. As they worked together through the long night, a strange silence filled the lab. The Queen moved with grace and precision, her hands steady as she adjusted the energy streams. Daniel followed her instructions, welding circuits, tightening bolts, reading data. For the first time in years, the royal lab was alive again. At one point, Daniel stopped to rest. He glanced at the Queen, who was staring at her daughter through the glass. She's beautiful, he said softly. The Queen didn't answer, but her lips trembled slightly. Finally she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "If the stars allow her to wake again, I will not forget what you've done, human. That is my promise to you." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then we both have promises to keep." Outside, the storm winds of Viora howled across the sky. Inside, the forbidden lab pulsed with blue light and quiet hope. Two beings from different worlds worked side by side, not as queen and servant, but as two souls chasing the same dream. And as the night deepened, neither of them noticed the faint, rhythmic flicker of light inside the chamber, a small heartbeat that wasn't there before. The next morning came with silence, an uneasy kind of silence that wrapped the palace in fear. Outside, the twin suns of Viora rose slowly over the silver towers, painting the sky in colors of red and gold. But inside the royal palace, nothing felt bright. The queen sat in her private chamber, her thoughts heavy like iron. She had not slept. All night she watched Daniel working in the forbidden lab. He moved carefully, his face glowing in the light of the machines. Every spark, every hum brought her both hope and terror. The Queen of Viora, the most powerful being in the galaxy, was now hiding a human janitor who dared to touch her royal science. She stared out the window as the palace guards changed shifts. "One day," she whispered to herself, "and already the stars test me." In the lab below, Daniel was still at work. His eyes were red from exhaustion, but he refused to stop. The revival chamber pulsed with soft blue light, steady now, not flickering like before. When the queen entered the room, Daniel straightened up quickly. "Your Majesty," he said, trying to clean his hands with a cloth. She walked closer, studying the chamber. Her daughter's small face looked peaceful inside, her chest rising faintly, only for a second each time, like a whisper of life trying to return. "She's responding," Daniel said, his voice quiet but filled with awe. "Her cells, they're rebuilding. Slowly, but they are." The queen leaned forward, staring at the faint pulse on the screen. It was real, not a glitch. For the first time in years, she dared to feel something she had buried: hope. But before she could speak, the door behind them hissed open. Two royal advisors entered, their tall, thin figures cloaked in golden robes. Their faces were sharp, their eyes burning with suspicion. "Your Majesty," said the elder advisor, bowing slightly, "we received an alert from the lab security system." "Unauthorized energy use," Daniel froze. The queen's expression didn't change. "I ordered it," she said smoothly. "I was testing the systems." The younger advisor frowned. "Testing? With a human technician?" His eyes darted to Daniel, who lowered his head. The elder one's voice hardened. "Your Majesty, you know the law of the stars forbids any human from handling royal technology. The punishment is death," the queen finished, her voice calm but cold. Daniel looked up slowly. "It's true, Your Majesty. You can tell them I acted alone. I broke the law." The queen turned her gaze on him, sharp and unreadable. "Silence, human." The advisors exchanged nervous looks. "Your Majesty, this cannot be ignored. The council will demand explanation. The law was made for protection, not punishment." The queen stepped closer to them. "Protection?" she repeated softly. "Tell me then, did the law protect my daughter when she died?" The two advisors stiffened, unsure what to say. Her voice rose, echoing through the chamber. "The law of the stars was written to keep order. But it has become a cage. You call it protection, yet it stopped every scientist who tried to save her." The advisors bowed their heads. "Your Majesty, please, enough." The queen's eyes glowed with furious light. The machines in the lab trembled. "You will tell the council nothing. This matter remains here. But leave," she commanded. The two advisors obeyed, retreating in silence, their faces pale with fear. When the doors closed again, Daniel exhaled shakily. "They'll come back," he said. "You know they will." The queen looked at the chamber, her eyes soft again. "Then we finish before they do," he nodded. "It's close. The energy pattern is stabilizing. But I need something stronger, something pure." "What do you mean?" "The heart crystal," he said carefully. "The one that powers your city's core reactor. Its energy could fully revive her." The queen froze. That crystal was sacred, used only for the defense of Viora. Removing it could bring chaos. But as she looked at her daughter's face, all her doubts burned away. "Then take it. she said quietly. Whatever it costs, Daniel's eyes widened. But Your Majesty, that's... I said, take it. Her voice softened, but it carried the weight of command. No one will question you while I live. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, realizing the danger she was walking into. For him, for her child, for everything. He finally nodded. Then let's bring her back. Hours passed. They worked in silence as the palace above grew restless. The advisors whispered to the guards. Rumors spread like fire about the Queen, about a human, about the forbidden lab. When Daniel finally placed the heart crystal into the machine, the room filled with light. A deep melodic hum shook the walls. The Queen shielded her eyes as waves of energy rippled through the air, and then the chamber flickered. The little girl's hand moved. The Queen gasped, tears filling her eyes. She's... But before she could finish, alarms exploded across the palace. The council's symbol flashed red on every screen. A cold voice filled the room. By decree of the Galactic Council, the Queen of Viora is under investigation for breaking the law of the stars. Daniel turned to her, pale. They know. The Queen's expression hardened like stone. Then let them come, she said quietly. They'll learn what happens when laws stand against love. The royal palace was no longer quiet. Outside, alarms echoed through the shining towers of Viora. The people didn't know the truth yet, but rumors moved faster than light. The Queen had broken the sacred law of the stars. She was hiding a human in the royal lab. Inside that very lab, the Queen stood beside Daniel, her silver armor reflecting the wild blue light of the revival chamber. The machine hummed with power, alive, dangerous, ready to burst. The heart crystal glowed in its core, sending sharp waves of energy through every wire. Daniel's hands were steady, but his face was pale. It's working, he said, his voice trembling. The readings are strong, stable, stronger than anything I've seen. The Queen didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the glass chamber where her daughter lay. The little girl's chest was still, her tiny fingers curled, her face peaceful. It looked almost like sleep. But every few seconds her skin flickered faintly as if light was moving beneath it. Careful, the Queen whispered. Too much energy and she'll burn. Daniel adjusted the controls. Sparks flew. The entire lab trembled. We're close, Your Majesty. I can feel it, the Queen's heart pounded. For years she had commanded armies, ruled planets, fought wars, but never had she been this afraid. Hope was more terrifying than any enemy. Then suddenly the lights dimmed. The Queen turned. What's happening? Daniel's eyes darted across the controls. Power drop. Something's pulling from the main core. A metallic voice spoke from the ceiling. Unauthorized energy transfer detected. Central system shutting down. Daniel slammed his fist on the console. No, no, no! The council must have activated a lockdown. The Queen's eyes burned bright. Override it. I can't, Daniel said. The system is rejecting human input. The Queen stepped forward, her hand glowing with blue fire. She placed it against the control panel, her energy surging into the circuits. The machine screamed, lights bursting back to life. Daniel stared at her, stunned. You're feeding it directly? She nodded, her voice shaking. If the stars deny her life, I'll give her mine. The energy burst brighter. The heart crystal pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. The room filled with sound, a deep, thrumming vibration that made the floor shake. Daniel, she shouted. Now! Begin the final phase! He typed rapidly, sweat dripping down his face. Activating neural reformation. Now, the chamber glowed white. Daniel covered his eyes. The Queen didn't move. She stood before the glass, her expression unreadable as light poured from the machine, wrapping her daughter's body like fire. The smell of ozone filled the air. Sparks rained down. The Queen's power weakened, but she refused to stop. Then, silence. Everything went dark. The humming stopped. The air was still. Daniel blinked, his heart racing. Did it fail? The Queen didn't answer. She took a slow step toward the chamber. The glass was fogged from the heat, and then a small hand pressed against the inside of the glass. Daniel froze. The Queen gasped. The fog cleared, and through it a pair of bright golden eyes opened. Mother, a small voice whispered. The Queen fell to her knees, her breath catching in her throat. By the stars? Daniel stared in disbelief. She's alive. Tears streamed down the Queen's face, something no one in the galaxy had seen for decades. Her daughter blinked, confused but breathing. Her tiny fingers touched the glass, weak but real. The Queen whispered, "Open it." Daniel hesitated. "Your Majesty, the system needs to stabilize." "Open it," she commanded again, her voice breaking. Daniel pressed the release. The chamber hissed open. Steam poured out. The Queen reached in with trembling arms and lifted her daughter close. The child's heartbeat was faint but steady. The Queen's body shook as she held her. "You're home," she whispered. "You're finally home." Daniel turned away, his throat tight. For the first time, he truly believed he had done something greater than himself. But their moment didn't last. A sudden explosion of sound tore through the lab doors. Metal bent and shattered as the council's guards stormed in, dozens of them, armored and armed. The advisors from before stood behind them, their faces pale with fear and fury. "By order of the Galactic Council," one guard shouted, "drop the child and step away from the human." The Queen rose slowly, her daughter in her arms. "You dare give me orders in my own palace?" "The law forbids this," the advisor cried. "You've broken the balance of nature." Daniel stepped between them and the Queen. "Don't hurt her," he shouted. The guards raised their weapons. The Queen's eyes glowed brighter, her voice thundering through the lab. "Lower your weapons or I will crush you where you stand." The guards hesitated, fear spreading among them. The Queen's power filled the air like a storm. She looked at Daniel, her voice softer now. "You gave her back to me. Whatever happens next, you must live." Daniel shook his head. "No, we started this together." The Queen turned toward the guards, holding her daughter close. "Then let the galaxy hear this," she said, her voice cold and strong. "The law of the stars ends tonight." Light burst around her again, brighter than before, and the rebellion began. The light faded slowly, leaving behind the smell of smoke and burning metal. The royal lab was in ruins, machines shattered, walls cracked, cables hanging like vines. In the middle of it all stood the Queen of Viora, holding her daughter close, her silver armor scorched and glowing faintly in the dark. The child's small chest rose and fell softly against her mother's arms. She was breathing, alive. Her golden eyes blinked open, looking around the destroyed room with confusion and fear. "Mother?" she whispered, voice thin as wind. The Queen's hands trembled. "Yes," she whispered back, her voice breaking for the first time in years. "It's me." The girl blinked again. "It's cold." The Queen pulled her close. "Not anymore." Daniel stood nearby, half covered in dust and soot. His face was tired but shining with disbelief. "She's really here," he murmured. "She's really alive." The Queen turned to him slowly. Her eyes were full of something that looked like gratitude, and something heavier. "You've done what no Vioran ever dared. You brought life where there was only death." Before Daniel could answer, the ground trembled. From beyond the broken lab doors came the sound of marching, hundreds of footsteps, metal armor clanging in rhythm. The Galactic Council's guard had arrived. Daniel's face paled. They brought the whole army. The Queen's grip on her daughter tightened. "Let them come." Moments later, the lab doors burst open. Bright white light flooded the room. Dozens of armored soldiers stepped inside, their weapons raised. Behind them came the council elders, tall figures in golden robes, their faces stern and cold. The leader, Elder Zorath, stepped forward. His voice was like ice. "Queen of Viora, you have broken the highest law. You have used forbidden technology. You have revived the dead. You have brought a human into our sacred science." Daniel tried to speak, but the Queen raised a hand. "I have done what your laws refuse to allow," she said calmly. "I have restored what was taken." Zorath's eyes flicked toward the little girl. "That is not life. That is an abomination." The Queen's energy flared. "Call her that again and I will destroy your throne myself." The air shook with her voice. Even the guards stepped back in fear. The little girl clung to her mother, her small fingers gripping the Queen's armor. "Mother, why are they angry?" she whispered. The Queen's heart broke a little more. "Because they are afraid, my child." Zorath's tone hardened. "Afraid? No. We are protectors of the universe's balance. Life cannot be stolen back from death. The human's actions have violated every code we have sworn to keep." He pointed at Daniel. "By law, he must be executed." Daniel stepped forward before the Queen could move. "I knew the risk," he said. "If I die, so be it. But don't take her away from her mother again." The Queen turned sharply to him. "You will not speak of death. Not after giving life." But the soldiers had already moved closer. Their weapons hummed, ready to fire. The queen raised her free hand and blue light exploded around her. A shield of pure energy formed in an instant, blocking the soldiers' aim. "Enough," she roared. "If law demands blood for mercy, then your law is nothing but cruelty." Zorath glared at her. "Then you declare war on the council?" The queen stood tall, her daughter's golden eyes reflecting her own. "No, I declare war on fear." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then, to everyone's surprise, the child spoke. Her voice was weak but clear. "He's not bad," she said, looking at Daniel. "He helped me. Don't hurt him." The words of a child, simple and innocent, broke through the heavy air like light through clouds. Even some of the guards hesitated, lowering their weapons slightly. Zorath's expression flickered with anger and doubt. "You would let a child judge our laws?" The queen smiled sadly. "A child sees truth more clearly than the council ever will." Then suddenly alarms blared again, this time from the city itself. The queen's head turned toward the sound. On the distant horizon, through the broken walls, she could see ships gathering in the skies, council fleets preparing to surround Viora. "They mean to arrest you," Daniel said quietly, "or worse." The queen nodded slowly. "Let them come. I will not hide." She turned to him. "Take her to the shelter beneath the palace. If I fail, she must live." Daniel shook his head. "You think I'll run now?" Her eyes softened. "You've already done enough." But before he could argue, the little girl reached out and took his hand. "Please stay," she whispered. The queen looked between them, her daughter's innocence, the human's courage, and made her choice. "Then we stand together," she said. "For life, for mercy, for what's right." She turned back to Zorath. Her voice was calm now, but filled with power. "Tell your council this: if they want to destroy what I've built, they will face me, not my people. And they will learn that even a queen can defy the stars." Blue fire burned around her once more, rising higher and brighter, wrapping around her and the child like wings. Daniel stood beside her, his jaw set, his fear gone. The council's guards stepped back, blinded by the light. And as the palace trembled, the reborn princess of Viora whispered softly into her mother's ear, "Mother, the stars are watching." The queen's eyes glowed brighter. "Then let them see what love can do." The throne chamber of Viora had never been this full. Thousands had gathered, soldiers, citizens, nobles, and council members, filling the vast silver hall that stretched beyond sight. The air shimmered with tension, thick enough to choke. Above them, the stars burned brightly through the transparent roof, as if watching what was about to unfold. At the far end of the hall stood the queen, tall and silent, her daughter beside her. The child's golden eyes glowed softly, proof that she was alive, proof that the impossible had happened. Beside the queen stood Daniel, the human janitor who had done what no alien dared. Before them, seated on floating thrones of gold, was the Galactic Council, 12 ancient beings cloaked in light. Their leader, Elder Zorath, leaned forward, his expression hard as carved stone. "Queen of Viora," he began, his voice echoing across the chamber. "You have broken the sacred law of the stars. You used forbidden technology, risked the balance of nature, and defied the will of this council." The queen's voice was steady. "I have done what your laws were too afraid to allow. I saved a child. My child," Zorath's golden eyes flashed. "And you brought a human into our science. You let him touch the energy of the ancients." Daniel took a breath and stepped forward. "I didn't come here to defy you," he said, his voice humble but clear. "I only wanted to help. I couldn't stand by and watch a mother lose her child when I had the power to try." Laughter rippled through the council seats. Cold, bitter laughter. "A janitor claims the right to play God?" one elder sneered. "You are nothing." The queen's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Enough." The laughter stopped. Her silver crown glowed faintly. "You call him nothing, but he did what your finest minds could not. He gave me back my daughter. Tell me, what kind of gods are you if mercy frightens you?" The chamber fell silent. Every being present, alien, human, soldier, citizen, listened. Zorath's voice grew harsh. "You risked the universe for love. What happens when others follow your example? When death is no longer respected, chaos will rise." The queen stepped forward. "Chaos? No, you fear change, Zorath. You fear that your power will fade when compassion becomes stronger than law." Her words rang like thunder. The people murmured. Some of the guards, once loyal to the council, looked uneasy. Daniel looked around. He could see faces shifting from fear to wonder, from obedience to doubt. Hope was spreading like fire. Then the queen took her daughter's small hand and lifted it gently for all to see. "This child," she said, "was dead. You said it was fate. You said even a queen must obey the stars. But this human refused to bow. And because of that, my child breathes again." She turned slowly, her gaze moving across the chamber. "So I ask you all, what is greater? A law written in fear, or a heart that dares to care?" The silence broke into whispers, then voices, then shouts. "The queen is right," someone cried. "Let mercy be our law." Zorath slammed his staff on the floor, his voice rising above the noise. "Enough, you speak treason!" The queen's eyes blazed with blue fire. "Then let it be treason," she shouted. "If treason means life instead of death, kindness instead of fear, then let every star burn with it." The hall erupted with energy. The council's light shimmered angrily, but their power began to flicker. The crowd's voices grew louder, stronger. Daniel took a step forward, his voice carrying through the chaos. "You've ruled by fear long enough. But the galaxy doesn't need rulers, it needs hearts." The child looked up at him and smiled faintly. "He's right, Mother." The queen bent down and kissed her daughter's forehead. "He is." Zorath rose, his form shaking with fury. "You will destroy everything." The queen's reply was calm, steady, final. "No, I will restore it." She raised her hand. The heart crystal, the same one that gave her daughter life, floated into the air above them. Its light expanded, reaching every corner of the chamber. The people shielded their eyes. When the glow faded, the council's golden thrones were empty. The light that had surrounded them was gone, absorbed into the crystal, now beating like a living heart above the queen's throne. The queen lowered her hand. The crowd stood in awe. "From this day," she declared, "the law of the stars is rewritten. No life will be denied hope. No world will be ruled by fear. The age of cruelty ends now." The hall filled with thunderous applause. Voices shouted her name. Tears fell from faces that had never known joy. Daniel stood still, overwhelmed. He had never wanted fame, never imagined standing beside a queen. Yet here he was, a janitor who had changed the fate of a galaxy. The queen turned to him, her eyes softer than he'd ever seen. "You once told me no mother should live in pain. You were right, Daniel. The stars heard you." He smiled faintly. "I didn't think they'd listen." She looked down at her daughter, then back at him. "They did, because even the stars bow to love." That night, the galaxy changed, and in the great city of Viora, people whispered the tale of the human who defied the stars, the janitor who brought life back to a queen's child, and taught the universe that mercy could shine brighter than any law.